Well, good day. I'm David Brazier. I teach Buddhism and Buddhist psychology. Amongst my many roles, I'm the president of the International Institute for Zen Therapy. I'm patron of a Vajrayana organization in India. I'm the head of a Pure Land Buddhist order based in Europe. And I've started various projects in the past with friends in the Theravada tradition. And the reason I'm telling you these things is so that you get a sense that what I'm going to teach in this talk is not going to be particularly sectarian. What I'd like us to do is to try to get to the heart of Buddhism. What is Buddhism? What's Buddhism about? Can we get to the central core of that? When I was in Vietnam, and was very privileged to have an interview with great Master Min Chao, the words that resonate in my mind from that encounter are when he said, all Buddhism is good. and these words sort of, it wasn't really the content of the words so much as the clearly depth of conviction and feeling that was in him from years of experience working in the Buddhist community, teaching Buddhism. At that time, he was the head of an institution teaching Buddhism in Vietnam with some hundreds of students, all for the most part monastics, and with a staff drawn from every different school of Buddhism in the country, all working together harmoniously. And to me, this is something very important, and in a way, these remarks are prefatory to what I want to say, but they're also very important. They're very central. We stand in some danger in Buddhism in the West because we have a history. We have a history not from Buddhism, but from our own spiritual traditions of conflict. We have a number of different churches, a number of different sects, and we're used to the idea that these sects are exclusive and that they're essentially in conflict with one another. And it would be a terrible tragedy if we were to import that idea into Buddhism, where essentially it is alien. Fundamentally, it's not where it's at in the Buddhist case. For sure, there have occasionally in Buddhist history been schisms, been fallings out. We're human after all. But fundamentally, the existence of a diversity of schools of Buddhism goes back to Buddha himself. The essence of Buddhism is very simple. But that simple essence then manifests in many different ways. And these different dimensions can each well repay extensive study. And the Buddha had a great talent for attracting to him and teaching and inspiring great disciples of very different characters, very different personalities, very different talents. Shariputra, very profound and learned in the teaching. Moggallana, great meditator. Others skilled in the discipline. And these sorts of dimensions, learning, study, ethical discipline, meditation, faith, the life of the community, concern for others. These are like dimensions of the Dhamma. They're dimensions of how we fill out and live the Dhamma. And the Buddha, when a new disciple came, the Buddha would discern the need of that person and perhaps allocate them to one or other of his great disciples. And they would study with that person. When there were great meetings of the Sangha, as there sometimes were, the Buddha inspired a very numerous following in his own day. And in the summer, in the rains retreats, they would meet. Those who were going to study one dimension of teaching would all be accommodated together in an area with that particular teacher. So in effect, there were different schools of Buddhism, schools that emphasized scholarship, schools that emphasized meditation, schools that emphasized discipline, the practice of faith, altruism, and so on. There were different schools in the time of Buddha, and this was approved by him. This is not something that has grown up as an aberration or grown up just out of conflict. And it's very important to remember this. All Buddhism is good. And if we in the West were to fall into a kind of narrow sectarianism regarding our approach to Buddhism as exclusive in some way, having a we're right and everybody else is wrong, or as one quite commonly finds, unfortunately, I have my practice. I can't do your practice. I have my practice. A certain amount of focus on a single practice has its use. But as soon as we start to become possessive, exclusive, narrow, we're losing what it's about. We're losing the very thing that Buddha was trying to convey to us by these very practices. Certainly one big mistake we can make in relation to this diversity that there is in Buddhism is to become narrow, sectarian, or exclusive. All of these are simply gates. They're simply doorways. You can go in at any doorway you like. And probably many people, actually, it would be valuable to try more than one doorway and to learn from more than one teacher. When we see, what you might say, full Buddhist societies in operation, like Tibet before the Chinese arrived, for instance, it was quite normal for somebody to train with a number of different teachers who contributed different things. Over the years, I myself have studied with a variety of different teachers in great depth, with some of them, and with some others, simply a short encounter, which nonetheless can be just as profound sometimes, because they add just that needed bit in one's development. Because we're all human, we're just ordinary beings with all our, we come into this life with this huge bag full of karma, and we have to find our way through it, like through a thicket, as it were. And this is our nature. This is how we are. We are carrying this great weight of ancient material, as it were, of tendencies. We are conditioned beings in a conditioned world. And finding some insight into that nature that we have is certainly part and parcel of learning our way to the Dhamma. But what is it that is at the core of all this? What's in the middle? What's in the center? We have all these doors. We come in one, we come in another. But what do we find? What's there in the middle? Many people in the West today think that Buddhism is simply meditation. Meditation is certainly one of these dimensions, but it's by no means the only one. It's not like the core of Buddhism. Buddha at various times says, what would a person who knows nothing about this, but who saw some well-practiced Buddhists, what would he notice? Well, that person would probably first of all notice that these people are ethical. They live good lives. They don't kill, they don't steal, they don't tell lies or misbehave in those sorts of ways. That's what they would notice. So we can say that ethical behavior is one dimension of Buddhism. But the Buddha would then say, but that's not the deepest. There's more than that. Then he would perhaps talk about meditation and mind training. A person who looked a little more deeply would see that these people were ethical because their minds were trained in various ways. And Buddhism offers this huge range of mind training practices, meditations of various kinds, meditations to develop particular qualities like compassion, like joy, meditations to generate understanding of impermanence, of our nature, meditations to bring about peace and a depth of inner tranquility. And all of these things are excellent. They're very good, and they certainly provide a basis for that kind of ethical life. They cultivate the mind in such a way that such a person will naturally manifest in that way that, looked at from the outside, we call ethical. Basically because their heart's in the right place, not because they have learned in a book, I must do this, I must do that, I must do the other, though they might have done, but primarily because why would they want to? Why would they want to kill and steal and lie and rape and so on? If one's heart is in the right place, this does not happen. So mind training, meditation, very good. The Buddha would say somebody who looked more deeply would notice that. But then the Buddha tends to go on and say, but that's not the most deep, that's not the most profound, that's not the ultimate. There's more to it than that. And then he would talk about wisdom and compassion and deep understanding, attitudes, Four Noble Truths, dependent origination, all these sorts of things that, if they're isolated, make up the doctrine of Buddhism, if you like. But Buddhism isn't a doctrine. It's not a set of beliefs. These things are aids. What is it? What is it that's at the very core of Buddhism? At the core of Buddhism is refuge. And refuge is a kind of mystery. So we can say, right at the core of all this understanding is a deep mystery. And this mystery is what is called refuge. When the Buddha was first enlightened, he spent some time in the place of his enlightenment, digesting this illumination that had come to him. And then he traveled. He set off to find the people, the 5 ascetics, that he had been practicing with most recently before he'd gone off on his own. And on this journey, he met 2 merchants, 2 lay people, and they saw that he was clearly somebody who'd got something. They could tell something from his manner, from his way of being, from his alacrity and positivity. They could tell he got something. And would he teach them? And what did he teach them? He taught them refuge. And this simple occurrence of the Buddha, fresh from his enlightenment, meeting ordinary people, and what did he teach them? He taught them refuge, is really important. Because we're ordinary people. I'm sure most of the people who watch this film are ordinary people living in the ordinary world. You have a day job to do, you have a house to manage, you maybe have children, you live an ordinary life. I'm not meaning anything disparaging by the word ordinary. You live the life that we all live. And how do you live the Dhamma in this situation? Is it only possible to live the Dhamma by going and being a hermit up in a cave in the Himalayas? Well, certainly there's some benefit in finding a cave and being a hermit for a while. You can learn a lot that way. Most of us are not doing that most of the time. And even if you go and be a hermit, it's only for a limited period of time. You still need to come back into the world and live the Dhamma in this world, with all that this world consists of, all the pressures, all the complications, all the ups and downs, all the things that can catch us off guard, the times that manifest our nature to us like a great mirror, actually. We make all sorts of idealistic resolutions to be a better person, to be more kind, more honest, give up smoking, not drink so much, all the sorts of things. We make New Year resolutions, and we manage to keep them for a day, if we're lucky. Not very long, because it's our nature. We are afflicted, as it were, by our karmic history, and understanding that ordinary nature is very important. So, refuge, the great mystery that lies at the heart of Buddhism, that I'm going to be talking more about through these talks, through this retreat. Refuge is what we have straight away, can have straight away, in the midst of our ordinary life. Refuge is not, he didn't say to these two merchants, go away and practice meditation for 20 years. He didn't say, you can only have this Dhamma when you have perfected your moral virtues. He didn't say, you can only have this Dhamma when you have studied all the scriptures and understood them all. He simply gave them refuge. And they had faith in that. And that entered into their life and made a great change in them. When Buddha, if we go to the other end of the Buddha's time of ministry, when Buddha died, there would have been people who said, quite rightly, the Buddha was a great pioneer and he showed us a way. And what we must do is we must copy, we must follow in his footsteps. We must do the things that he did and learn to be as he was. And this is all good. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is a pitfall. And the pitfall is that the goal becomes very remote. The goal is a very long way into the future. And actually may even be unattainable by our own effort. I don't know about you. I've done quite a few decades of intensive meditation training. Is my mind now such that no thought that I have not controlled enters it? Certainly not. Would I want it to be? No. There is a richness in our natural process. What we are often aiming for, a state of great perfection and control at the beginning of our career in our spiritual life, is not actually where it's at. The Buddha gave people refuge. Take refuge in Buddha and in Buddha's manifestations.